If you have attempted to start the brushes exercise for this class, ARTC-1402 or 1302, depending on what year this is, and you're using Adobe Photoshop 2018, you may have figured out already that the video does not match the tools that the new version of Photoshop offers. So I'm going to try to clear that up by showing you how to set up the tools in such a way that we can complete the exercise as it stands, and we can create that simple drawing of a field with grass and the sun and the sky and simple things like that. So first of all, I'm going to create a new canvas, a new file to work on. I'll click on the File menu and select New. Control N is your shortcut. Command N on a Mac. And wait to see my options. I'm going to use just a standard size image. Select from Photo on top, and here's our default Photoshop size. It's a 7 by 5 rather, and it wants to start at 300 dpi, which is fine. But if you're working in the El Centro campus, you might have difficulty with a larger file. So why don't we get the resolution down a little bit, maybe to 150, so it's just half the size in memory. I'll click on Create. Background contents white is fine. And wait just a second here for it to appear, and here's my workspace. Yours may not necessarily look the same. Maybe you're working on a standard workspace. Make sure if you click on your window menu, Workspace, you might have Essentials, even Start or something like that. I've selected Painting, and then that way my brushes appear on the right side. If you don't see brushes anywhere, click on Window, make sure that brushes is checked, and you should be able to see it. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to change also the width of my tools, because you can't see the very bottom that there's more tools here to be had. So I'm going to expand it by clicking the double carets to 2 columns, and now I can see my foreground and background color. Also, to make things a little bit easier, I'm going to separate the tab, that is this image, from being docked. That way I have the liberty to make it just slightly larger and get it far away enough from the tools that I don't necessarily have things stacked on top of each other. I'm also going to press Ctrl-0 to bring the image to a full size within the window, and now I can begin to play with my brushes. My brush is the shortcut for it is the letter B. If I click on B, then brush will be automatically selected. If you're still working on a 1-column tool set, then it'll be a little bit different than it appears in two separate columns. I'm also going to separate the brushes from where they stand right now and minimize the swatches, and then that way I can see my brushes a little bit freer on the right side. The big change that's happened with Photoshop brushes is the fact that now they're all organized within their own folders. It used to be that we would just see this huge palette of brushes and literally just click on them, see what you were working with. Now they want to show you what they will look like when you use them. So there's this path that's followed, and that's going to be an issue if we want to work on a simple picture like the one in the previous video. That being said, I can fix this by clicking on the hamburger icon, the contextual menu on the top right, and I see that brush name is selected. That's why I can see general brushes and the name of the brush that's inside of all of these folders. Brush stroke is what's showing us the flow of the stroke, so I'm going to turn that off. This only shows us now the name of the stroke. I'm going to then ask it to give me just the brush tip, and then that way I can see the shape of the brush. And now I see more basic brushes. So there's hard round, soft round, things that we can make changes to by using the brush selectors over here. So what's missing still though is the is the brushes that are used in the previous video. That is, other than the general brushes, we had access to a maple leaf, some grass, and a whole bunch of other neat stuff that's been with the program for lots of years. So let's get those back by clicking once again on the hamburger icon and asking to show our legacy brushes. I'll click OK, and it tells me that it's going to restore them, and then legacy brushes appears as the bottom folder. If I click on the caret, I get all of the old brushes that were available before, except I can't still see them like I used to, but we'll just have to get used to that, I guess, a little bit. I'm going to click on the caret to see the default brushes, and if I scroll down, I'm going to find the shapes that are used in the previous video. Namely, it's going to be the grass right here, dune grass, and scattered maple leaves. Now that I can find these, I can then start working on the image as I did in the previous video. So the first thing I'm going to do, now that I have my brushes, is click on the foreground color, and I'm going to select just a light blue somewhere, something that will work as our sky. I'll click on OK and go to Edit and tell it to fill with the foreground color. I could have also selected the color from here by clicking on Color, and I get the palette again, but I've already got one, so foreground color it is. I'll click OK, and now I have this blue sky, quote unquote. And so that now that the sky is done, I want to create a new layer so that I don't necessarily regret making changes to the sky. I can go and click on Window, Menu, and bring my layers out. They were always here in this icon. I could expand this to see them a little bit better, hide the brushes more to the side, or even better, stack them on top of the layers, and then double click on swatches so they go away. Here's the layers, and there's my brushes all at once. So now that I have the background, I'm going to click on the create new layer icon. That's the second from the right at the bottom. You could also go to the layer menu and tell it to create a new layer. So on our layer 1, this is where I'm going to draw some kind of a field or dirt or something like that. That's going to happen by clicking on the foreground color and finding a brown. If you click on the color selector here, somewhere close to yellow, you'll find some shades of brown or dark yellow, orange, etc. Click OK. And since I had already selected at some point just a regular brush, that should be at the very top in the general brushes. You can use a soft round or a hard round. I'll click on soft round, make it large enough so that it's as if you had just a large brush that you're going to cover a lot of area with, and I'll just brush it and get me a soft area here with some sort of a field, something that will represent the ground. And once that's set, I could, let's use something that's not so soft. I'll increase the hardness to maybe 50-something%. And then that way it doesn't look like it's a foggy day. Next, I'm going to create a new layer. Clicking on Layer, New Layer, and click OK. You could be changing the names of your layers, so I can change layer 1 to ground. And layer 2 is where I want to have my grass, so I'll just call that grass now. Make sure that it's active. It's the lighter gray. And now in my brushes, I can go and find in the legacy brushes, if I scroll down once again to the grass. This is one of those mathematically heavy brushes. It's going to actually doing a whole bunch of computations that we won't worry too much about, other than telling it somewhere there's going to be green grass. So I'm clicking on foreground color, my color picker, selecting a green. It can be your choice of green. And on the background color rather, click on that and select a different shade of green. Something that may contrast. If you picked a darker green, why not select a lighter green? I'll click OK, and now I have two shades of similarly colored greens. And now that I have the brush with the grass shape open, I can start to draw, just clicking and dragging across the field. Maybe I can get one of these greens to be a lot lighter, so I'll click on it and select it to be a little bit brighter, and then that way this will change and be easier to look at. If you use your bracket keys, the left bracket key will make it smaller, the right bracket key will bring it larger. You can also change it by clicking on the number up on your brush tools on the top left on these options. The number that is assigned to the brush is not necessarily saying that this is number 400, but rather that 400 pixels from side to side will be used to draw the shape of your brush. Once you have enough brushes here, and this is just a mess of a field, we can add yet another layer. So I'll click it there. I'm going to select a different color, this time something that's kind of orange, and how about somewhere brownish, maybe see a little bit more orange right about here, something that maybe will resemble a maple leaf. So that's going to have more red than brown, somewhere around right here in this family. I'll click OK and change my brush to scattered maple leaves. And be careful with this one, because you don't need to click and drag. As soon as you click once, it will draw multiple versions of that maple leaves. So I'll make this larger and bring them somewhere around here. By selecting, or creating rather, yet another layer, I'm going to move it down below here so that the first one, layer 1, is actually on top. I'll click on the name and change it to leaves. And on that new layer, layer 2, I'll double click and just call it more leaves. And something that would be nice to have is if you click on the same way, adding those leaves again, I can go to the filter menu and tell it to blur, add a Gaussian blur, and what this does is then it will make it a little bit out of focus if you just make it a little bit blurry, and you get some sort of depth going on with your image. And I made sure that the leaves that I put out of focus were in the lower one so that they would appear to be behind the original leaves. You can play with the other brushes and see what you can bring into this picture. The only other thing that I ever really play with, there are some butterflies that we can use as well. They might not be necessarily on that particular folder. I do believe they are on special effect. So let me look for that. Right here there's a butterfly, and for butterfly, pick your poison here, whatever it is that you want your butterflies, whatever color they're going to be. I think that I would go with a red, or maybe just a straight orange. I'm going to mix no blue, but rather maybe half of red, magenta, and 100 yellow, and get this orange going. And add a few butterflies. This is going to be as scattered as the leaves were, so I'll put them somewhere between the more leaves and leaves. I'll click on new layer there and call it butterflies, and just click a couple of times, and we get some crazy colors because, like I said, the math on it is just kind of strange. You can also add a sun. You can play with the grass so that it's a little bit more orderly. It's not so shaggy like mine is. Actually, I'm going to click on my grass layer, use my move tool, press Ctrl T to get a free transform, and then that allows me to just move it down a little bit and even make it smaller. I'm holding the Shift key as I do that, and that just changes the appearance by moving the grass somewhere else. You can do the same thing with leaves, butterflies, etc. You can either press Ctrl T or just use the move tool to move the leaves or whatever part of the layers that you're moving out of the way. If you're going to be drawing the sun, I do believe I used it in the other video, I'll click on background, so that's my starting point. It's the sky. Create a new layer, call it sun. Change my tool to the not rectangular marquee, but rather the elliptical marquee. Make sure that I have a sun-like color, let's say yellow. And there it is. This is yellow. It's 94% yellow. A little bit of blue, but that doesn't matter. And I'm pressing the Shift key and dragging the elliptical tool. That way I have a circle. And then click on Edit, Menu, and Fill with the foreground color, which is yellow. Click OK. And the selection is still on, so I can see the marching ants. I'll click on Select, Deselect, and then move it somewhere else where maybe it makes more sense that the sun is there. If you want to play with the way the sun appears, you can also add that Gaussian blur again. That gives it a little bit of a softer edge. Later on, we'll be adding some clouds, but I'll do that in the next video when I show you how to create your own layer, or rather create your own brush. So far we've been using just a couple of the brushes available in the library. Hopefully you have now been able to find the brushes where they are and apply them on a simple picture. Hopefully a lot better than mine. I usually get some really good work from students that really have a fun time using the brushes. So we'll talk about adding clouds and other things like that in the next video. Be sure that you save your image and turn this in for the brush assignment. Click on File, Save As. I'm gonna name mine brushes _ my last name, and I'll be once you save yours, be sure that this is the file that you turn in with all your layers, etc., and that will be graded. For the next assignment, we'll be creating our own brushes, and I'll show you how to search for new brushes on the internet and bringing them to your picture. I'll be adding a cloud to this one in the next video.